Let's move on to the category mainstream. We've already talked about this record a little bit at the beginning when we were talking about Radiohead. U2, All That You Can't Leave Behind. This is a band, as we said earlier, almost doing the opposite of what Radiohead are doing.
Yeah.
They're saying, what did people like about us when we were doing the Joshua Tree and when we were doing, Boy and War and The Unforgettable Fire? Let's do that again, because we've kind of done this experiment with, what were the previous two albums? Pop and Zooropa.
And Actung Baby.
And Actung Baby. And was there another record? Maybe that's it. Yeah,
I think that was it.
Those are the previous three records, right? So we've kind of done our experimental thing. Maybe we shouldn't do that anymore. Maybe we should go back and do what people liked, which is strangely at a point that Radiohead are going the complete opposite direction in a sense. Radiohead are doing what U2 did, arguably more successfully. They're kind of doing what U2 did when they made Zooropa, aren't they?
I think they are to a degree, definitely. Although I think with U2 that maybe it's twofold, really. Number one, they always listened to fans and to the time. So they'd have been really aware of the Bends and OK Computer. And possibly, as I've said, everyone wants to be Radiohead at the point Radiohead becomes something different. U2 are no exception to this. And I think number two, it had sort of soured their irony. So when they first became ironic, should we say, on Actung Baby, it was the right move at the right time, and it was brilliant for them. And I think they carried that through onto Zooropa, which again, is arguably more ambitious in some ways than Actung Baby, and Pop. And while Zooropa wants more sort of reinforced, I think they're following. It's what we're saying about with Tusk After Rumours. The sales were getting lower and lower. The stage sets might have been getting more ambitious. But by the time of Pop, people were actually slightly bored by their irony. And I think there was also a reaction to that.
Was there also a sense that the people didn't trust their motives for adopting electronic music and trying to be more hip and more urban? I've always slightly distrusted that. I mean, I like U2, don't get me wrong, I like them a lot. But I think when I hear Tom or Johnny Greenwood adopting krautrock or electronica, I completely believe it's because they genuinely love it.
Yeah.
And I think with Bono and folks, I always felt slightly like it was more of a careerist move. And I might be unfair there. I'm sure they were genuinely excited by the possibilities of music.
Well, there's a difference, isn't there? Because I think that with Radiohead, that there's a continuum, although they're very, very different records. Amnesiac and OK Computer have the same level of seriousness. So if you're looking at the artwork and you're looking at the lyrics and you're looking at Tom York's delivery, actually, he's not shifted probably from the first great Radiohead piece to Amnesiac. Everything around it shifted, whereas you think of U2, whereas they were this very earnest, anthemic band, by the time you're getting to Actung Baby, Zooropa, Pop, they're trying comedy, they're trying Elvis Vegas outfits.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
In the presentation.
They're very well aware in the presentation and the lyrics. But they're undercutting themselves, which I don't mind.
But partly I think that was a reaction to the fact that people always accuse them of being too pompous, which of course people accuse Radiohead of being too, but Radiohead never seemed to have cared.
Yeah.
They don't seem to care. But I think U2 maybe took it to heart a little bit. There was also that tendency with U2, we're going to go back to our Americana roots that they never had growing up in a Northern Ireland. Southern Ireland, I beg your pardon.
Schoolboy era number one. Massive.
Well, that's a terrible one. Yeah, no, it's because we were just talking about Van Morrison off air a minute ago.
Yeah.
They never had those Americana roots, and it always made me slightly suspicious, of bands that can suddenly find America,
Yeah.
Although Elton John and Bernie Taupin managed to pull it off in a way, but I never completely buy into it, So is there a sense that they kind of succeeded in their goal? Because this album was massive, wasn't it?
This one did. I think after this point, maybe not. But this one is almost like you're exactly right. Yeah. What do people like about us? What we do? It was full of the most anthemic U2 pop songs for, a decade and a bit. And they do pull it off. They're good. They're confident. It's a strong album. Then again, for me, it's too clean. I just, whereas I think there are some rough edges and some duff bits and brilliant bits on Joshua Tree, which keeps it interesting. This is kind of almost like a streamlined, honed to perfection U2 rock albums. So
Okay.
it's always been slightly less
Little bit
interesting to me.
contrived in that sense.
But and one of the things I suppose I never quite trusted about U2 compared to some other artists, you know, Bono is clearly very gifted and a brilliant frontman. But whenever you saw an interview with him, it was either, you know, oh, well, of course, from the very beginning, Scott Walker's the biggest influence. Of course, from the very beginning, Sugar Cube's the biggest influence. Of course, from the very beginning, punk was my influence. Of course, from the very beginning, it was the Strawbs I loved. He always has, for whatever interview in whatever era, from the very beginning, it was Stravinsky, Strawbs, punk, Björk, associates that was always running through his music.
I think that's what I mean. I never quite trust him. I think there's a lot of posturing and badge wearing with them. I mean, to be fair, they have an incredibly distinctive sound of their own. And when they're just trying to be U2, which is most of the time, to be fair, it's amazing. But also, I find his lyrics are not that. I mean, there's a song on this album called Elevation, and I'm sorry, but when you start doing chorus rhymes like, I wish I could fly high up in the sky, you're going in Orville the Duck territory for me. That's the laziest rhyme in history, fly sky and high, sorry. And it's in the big single off this record, Elevation, fly sky and high. I'm sorry, you've got to do better than that, seriously.